Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Baseball Replay Journal, and today we have another 1908 game for you, as we have the St. Louis Browns once again against the Chicago White Sox, and both teams come in with 2-1 records, and we'll see how this one goes. We have for you today Bill Dineen, who was sort of your more established veteran star pitcher, coming up against Ed Walsh. And if you're a fan of the dead ball era like me, Ed Walsh needs no introduction. The first batter up, George Stone, rolls a 62 for a 12, and we're going to have a little bit of little E action right from the very start, and the rule is a 13. The result is changed to a 19. That's going to be an error there on the third baseman. That's on Tannehill, and just like that, we have a runner on first base already. And I'm trying to get rid of some of this, looks like digital noise or whatever here on the Chicago White Sox batting lineup. My apologies for that. Next batter up, Bobby Wallace, rolls a 36 for a 33. That's a little pop out at third base, and that will be Tannehill making the catch, and there is one away. 54 is the rule for Hobe Ferris, who hits a little fly ball over to right field, as it's a 45 result. And up comes Jimmy Williams now with runners still on first base and 2 outs. Now maybe we should have hit and run. What do you think? Williams rolls a 53 for a 19. That's also going to be potentially third base, but that error result is changed. That winds up being a single to right field for Jimmy, and the runner, Stone, winds up going all the way around to score. It must have been really some sort of side, I think. You got to think about Enos Slaughter, with the mad dash around to the plate to score in 1946. It probably would have been something like that, I think, at least in my head. And so just like that, the Browns have scored a run against Ed Walsh. Walsh now has an ERA of 0.93. I know we're not supposed to be thinking about ERA, but some of us are a little bit stubborn in our old-time habits. Danny Hoffman now, he rolls a 51 for a 9. That's a little ground ball to shortstop, and Parent has that for the out. And just like that, here comes the bottom of the first inning. We are at the old Southside Park, old wooden ballpark, the third version of Southside Park in Chicago. This one was built for the American League White Sox back in 1900. More on that in a second. Fielder Jones rolls a 40, which is a foul ball. Unusual play result 40. We'll roll for him again, 65 this time, which is a 35. Foul out to third base, and that's Hobe Ferris, who has that one away. Ed Hahn now rolls 55 for an 8 against Bill Dineen, and that's a little ground ball to shortstop. Wallace has that and throws over to first base for the second out. Up comes Patsy Doherty, rolls a 14 for a 43. The potential error doesn't come into play, and instead that's a fly ball out to Stone in left field, and he makes the play. We go to the top of the second inning just like that. Yeah, so 1900, the first year of the Chicago White Sox, and you thought it was 1901. It's actually 1900. We're going to talk a lot here in the future about the history of the American League, but yes, the White Sox were in Chicago in 1900, and it took me years before I figured that one out. Roy Hartzell starts up the top of the second inning, rolls a 46 for a 29. Little ground ball over to Ed Walsh, throws the first base to make the first out. One away, and here comes Tom Jones. Jones rolls an 11, which is a 7. Despite the fact he has those double columns, this single column 11 is a 7, not a 0. He only has the one chance at getting into that sacred double column. He hits a 7, or rolls a 7, which is a little base hit to right field, and that's the second hit now off of Ed Walsh. He's not fooling many people today. Jim Stevens, the catcher, now rolls a 44 for an 8. That's a little ground ball over to the first baseman. Donahue fields it, flips it over to Walsh for the out. Walsh covers, and there's 2 away. And here comes Bill Dineen. Rolls a 54, which is a 49. We get to check that little E error rating. And there is no error. There's a little fly ball out to center field, and Jones makes the catch. And we go to the bottom of the second inning. Yeah, so one of the biggest coups that Van Johnson had was in convincing the Chicago National League team to allow him to have a minor league team in Chicago in 1900 in the Western League, which was soon thereafter renamed to the American League. Davis rolls a 45 and gets a 14 and is the runner on first base here in the bottom of the second inning for the White Sox. And as you can imagine, if you didn't know that, that's some pretty interesting stuff. We're going to bunt with Freddie Parent This South Side grounds that we're playing at right now is a pretty famous ballpark as a result, pretty important, famous in that sense, but probably not that well known for most modern baseball fans. Parent rule is a 31, and that's that 14. That bit us once before, but this time around with the bunt instead of the hit and run, with the bunt that ends up being a walk, and Deneen loses Parent, and that puts runners in first and second now, with nobody out still for the White Sox, and up comes Jiggs Donahue. Freddie Parent, by the way, is a pretty well-known name if you've played a lot with these really, really old seasons with these really old White Sox. Donahue, and my question is, do we bunt or swing away? I think we bunt again. I'm just looking at that on-base percentage number and thinking that looks pretty bad. We get a 34 for a 44 result. That's a little bunt over to first base, and that is Tom Jones fielding that one. He flips it over to Williams, who's covering at the bag for the out, and the runners move up. Lee Tannehill now comes up, and now the White Sox have runners on second and third with only one out and two chances here to drive things home and tie the score at least. Tannehill rolls a 65 for a 35, but there is a little lead. Roll here is a 43. I always have to look close when it's a little bit dark here. My eyes, I guess, are not as good as they should be. That's a little ground ball over to first base, and Jones has it and makes the out himself. Tannehill unable to move anybody up, unable to make anything happen, and that brings up Billy Sullivan. Bill Deneen, pretty good pitcher in his own right. The roll is a 12 for a 25, and that is a line drive to second base, and Williams grabs it, and that is that. Go to the top of the third inning, and we got George Stone leading things off, and he rolls a 43 for a 29. Little comebacker to Walsh again, and there's the first out as he throws to first. Bobby Wallace now rolls a 22 for a 7, and he gets a single to right. Third hit of the game off of Walsh. Ed's not fooling anyone this time around. Interesting. Hope Ferris now rolls a 66 for a 0, and here comes that second column, 21 for a 6. Ferris gets the double, and Bobby Wallace moves to third base, and that brings up Jimmy Williams now with one out, runners on second and third against Ed Walsh. I think what we're going to do is I think we're just going to swing away with Williams, who's the number 4 hitter, just taking a look at his card. But we'll see if we regret this or not. And, of course, the Browns are going to pitch to him, and they're going to put the infield in. 46 is the rule for a 27, and that's a little ground ball doing nothing over to Tannehill at third base, and he gets the play at first. Now, tell me what you would do if you would do something different. I mean, it's only the top of the third inning, but against Ed Walsh, maybe we should have bunted there because I don't know how many chances like this we're going to get in this game if we're the Browns. Hoffman now rolls a 13 for a 14, despite the fact that Walsh has that nice Z that ends up being a base on balls. Walsh giving up his his third walk of the season. Let's see if I can figure out where it says what he's done in this game. Yeah, here we go. His first walk of the game here. And up comes Roy Hartzell. Rolls a 65 for a 35, and that's a strikeout. Second strikeout of the game there for Walsh. And on we go to the bottom of the third inning. Walsh is able to get himself out of that jam. Now let's see if the White Sox can get a hit. Walsh, the first man up, rolls a 23 for a 30. That's a fly ball to left field. Stone's got it there for the first out. Up comes Fielder Jones. He rolls a 13 for a 14, and that's a walk. And now the White Sox have a chance for something. And I'm just looking at this card really quick for how many 31s he has. He only has the 1, and he only has the 144. Question, of course, is whether we want to hit and run or not. I think we're going to hit and run anyway, but this might be the wrong decision. We'll find out. Rolls a 13 for a 14. And Jones, this time, Jones is able to steal second base. I say that because we had a game not long ago where the runner on first base was unable to steal on that 14 result and ended up destroying a rally. So Jones now is the runner on second base, as Ed is still up there. And the next dice roll is a 22 for a 7, and Hahn is able to single and drive him home. And just like that, it's a brand new ball game. And the White Sox have, by the way, their first hit of the ball game. And now we'll see where we go from here. A very good piece of hitting there by Hahn to drive the runner in. despite the fact that Dineen is actually pitching, so far at least, a pretty good game. I'll tell you, Dineen is a very familiar name for those of us who played a lot with dead ball era seasons. Dineen was one of the best pitchers in baseball, I would say, around like 1900, 1901, 1902. And you might wonder, well, what in the world happened to him? Because he's clearly not the best pitcher on the St. Louis staff. Now, if you know things about NP3, you will be able to see that Dineen does have a pretty good rating. I mean, a 13Q0 is indicative that he had a pretty good season. But the truth is that he was starting to have problems. Didn't have a great 1907 with the Browns. Was okay in 1908, and then starting 1909 had a lot of arm issues, and then wound up becoming an umpire. And was, I believe, the first former pitcher who had thrown a shutout in a World Series game to then turn around and be an umpire in a World Series game. So there's a little bit of trivia for you. That comes, of course, courtesy of the Sabre Bio people. Now, while I'm yakking away, Patsy Doherty is waiting at the plate with Ed Hahn on at first base. And I think it's time for some hit and run action. I don't know what you think, but I think it's time that we did a little bit of hitting and running. And so we'll see what happens this time around. We roll a 45 for 14, and that's the moment of truth. And Hahn is thrown out at second base, and we can go ahead and see the reason why. The reason why is because though he has that 10 on 15, he doesn't have that 11 that gets him that extra stolen base. And so we've been bitten in a couple of games now by that little stolen base bug with the hit and run play, and that's the risk that you take, because you're really sending the runner as an offense. You're trying to force the game in on him. Now the roll here for Patsy is a 12 for a 25, and we have a little E to worry about, and we don't get it. It's a 55. Ends up being a ground ball to second base, and Williams grabs it, and he throws him out at first. We go to the top of the fourth inning. This is a tight game so far, 1-1. First man up is Tom Jones, rolls a 64 for a 13. That's a strikeout. That is strikeout number 3 for Ed Walsh in the game, number 10 on the season already. Next man up is Jim Stevens and rolls a 65 for a 35, and we have a little E to worry about, and it's a 56 is the roll, so it's not going to happen. That's a little foul out to the third baseman. Next up is Bill Dineen. And here comes Bill, and he rolls a 63 for a 27. That's a little ground ball over to Tannehill at third base, and he throws over for the out. We go to the bottom of the fourth inning, and George Davis starts it up for the White Sox. Rolls a 45 for a 14, and that's a walk given up by Dineen. That's his fourth walk given up so far this game. Bill not pitching so hot. Not today. Freddie Parent now rolls a 65 for a 35. And the air number is 18, which is the shortstop, but that's not going to come up. Ends up being a little foul out to the catcher over to Stevens, and that's the first out of the inning. Jiggs Donahue now up with the runner on first base, and I think we're going to bunt again with him. Roll is a 64 for a 13. That ends up being a foul strike. We'll bunt with him again here. 62 this time for a 12, and that ends up being a little grounder over to third base. Ferris goes to Williams for the force play at second, so there is no sacrifice. Donahue's aboard on the fielder's choice. Tannehill comes up with 2 outs now. The roll is a 65 for a 35, and there's another foul out to Stevens. That does that, and up come the Browns here in the top of the fifth. Up first is George Stone. Rolls a 55 for an 8 result, which, because Walsh right now is a B, is a little ground ball over to Parent, makes the throw to first, 1 away. Wallace is up now. He rolls a 56 for a 34, and that's a strikeout because of that Y rating that Ed Walsh has, and that means that Walsh now has 4 strikeouts in this game. Up comes Hope Ferris. He rolls a 33 for a big 0, and we go double column hunting, and it's a 54. He ends up getting a single, and then he steals second base as Jimmy Williams comes up there. We got 2 outs now and runner on second base for the Browns. Not much that we can do in this situation other than just roll and pray. Williams rolls a 32 for a 26. That's a ground ball over to Davis, and he makes a play at second and flips over to first base. And that does it for the top of the fifth. And here come the White Sox in the bottom of the fifth. And it's Billy Sullivan, not Sunday, Sullivan to lead it off. Rolls a 46 for a 27. That's a ground ball to third base, and Ferris makes the play 1 away. Ed Walsh comes back up there again. Not a too bad of a hitter in his own right, but not so good this time. Rolls a 42 for a 13. That is a strikeout. And up comes Fielder Jones now. Jones rolls a 14 for a 43. That's a fly ball over to Stone in left field, and that does that. We go on to the top of the 6th inning now. The Browns with 5 hits already in this ball game, hitting the ball fairly well off of Walsh, but they can't get much by the way of runs. Hoffman rolls a 53 for a 17. 53 is always that air number, and he hits the ball over down to Tannehill, who throws it away. Hoffman aboard on the air. That brings up Roy Hartzell now with a runner on first base, and we're just going to swing away. I think we're not going to do anything fancy. 33 is the roll, and that was the right decision. Ends up being a single to right center, and Hoffman moves over to second base on that. Tom Jones now comes up, and this is a bunting situation, a pretty obvious one. Top of the 6th inning, 1-1 ball game with Ed Walsh on the mound. It's time to bunt. 56 is the roll for a 32. That's a good bunt. It's a bunt that goes down to third base. Tannehill's got it. He throws over to Davis covering at first base for the out at first. Hoffman and Hartzell, however, both moved up. With 1 out, here comes Jim Stevens, who you know is not going to be able to do much else other than bunt. We're going to bring the infield in. We're going to drop the dice on the table. We bring the infield in, and we're going to bunt, and let's see what happens. 41 is the roll for a 28. That's a foul strike. I don't have all of these boards memorized, and especially when we get to these bunting situations, I forget what they are, so it's going to be interesting. 45 is the roll now for a 14, and that's a hit by pitch, and that fills the bases. So Ed Walsh digs his own grave here by hitting the batter with the pitch. Here comes Bill Dineen now, only 1 out, bases loaded in a 1-1 game, top of the 6th inning. That's a pretty big result, I would say. And here comes Bill Dineen, and let's see if the pitcher can help himself out. Rolls a 25 for a 9, and that's a good bunt. That's a bunt that goes down again to third base, and it's Tannehill who makes the play over to first base where Davis is covering. They get the out, but despite the fact that they get the out at first, the run does score. It's 2-1 now, Browns. And this is the way that it works in 1908. I tell you, if you ever try playing with one of these real dead ball era seasons, I'm not talking 1901 or 1900. I'm talking like 1908, 1907, 1909, a season that really doesn't have a lot of offense. If you ever try playing with it and you try not bunting, what you'll notice is that you have a real hard time getting runs to score. Though it might seem counterintuitive to the sort of modern sabermetrical brain, the truth is that when you're facing this type of pitching, you've got to do something. You got to do something to push runs across. You just simply have to. You learn this the more that you play these games, the more you realize the reason why they played the game this way back in the olden days. George Stone now comes up, and there's a 62 for him, which is a 12, and that's another strikeout for Walsh. But it looks like it may be too little too late. 2-1 now Browns, and they've got to, the White Sox have to figure out Bill Dineen. They've only got 4 innings to do it in. And the first man up is Ed Hahn, the right fielder. He rolls an 11 for a 0. Next roll is a 12 for an 11. So Hahn gets a base hit, and then with Patsy Doherty up there, he steals second base. Now, where you can't hit and run, of course, in this situation, what I'm thinking is, do I swing away or do I bunt? Nobody out. I think we swing away right here. That's only the second hit, though, the White Sox have had in this game. So let's see how the dice roll here. 55 is the roll, and that is a single to... what is that a single to? Single to somewhere or other. Single to the left field. No, that was the play before. This winds up being a single at any rate, and the runner scores, but it triggers the little C. Single over second base. All right, so it's to right field. Doherty gets the single, scores or drives in the run. The score is now 2-2, and then on the next pitch, on the next play, he attempts to steal second base, and he's thrown out. Big play, though, for Patsy Doherty and for the White Sox in general, able to tie this game up really quickly despite giving up or despite allowing the Browns to take the lead there in the top of the 6th inning. And up is George Davis now with nobody on base. Davis rolls a 24 for a 13. Dineen gets him to strike out. That's only the second strikeout of the game so far for Bill, who's walked 4. Next man up is Freddie Parent, rolls a 52 for a 27, and that's a little ground ball over to third base. Ferris has got it, and he makes the play at first, and that does that. Go to the top of the 7th inning now in a real tight ball game. Bobby Wallace starts it off, rolls a 63 for a 31, and that's a fly ball out to Jones in center field, makes the catch, 1 away. Here comes Hope Ferris, now rolls a 24 for a 13, strike 3. And now there are 2 outs. And up comes Jimmy Williams, rolls a 45 for a 14, and that's another walk for Ed. Walsh has given up only 2 walks today. Up next is Danny Hoffman, who rolls a 62 for a 12, and that's a little ground ball over to, looks like that's over to Davis at second base, who flips it over to Parent for the out at second. And here we go into the bottom of the 7th inning. Up first, Jiggs Donahue rolls a 62 for a 12, but we'll see what the little E has to say about that. We roll a 31 there. Donahue's out at first base. That's unassisted to Jones. And next is Lee Tannehill, and he rolls a 46 for a 27, little ground ball over to Ferris, and there are 2 away now. 2-2, tight ball game. Only 3 hits for the White Sox today. They can't figure out Bill Dineen. And as I say that, Billy Sullivan rolls a 22, but that's an 8, and that means it's a fly ball out to center field, and Hoffman's got that. And we go to the top of the 8th inning. Roy Hartzell starts it off, rolls a 42 for a 12, and he strikes out. That's strikeout number 7 today for Walsh. Tom Jones now rolls a 65 for a 35, and we have a little E to worry about, and it's going to come into play. It's an 11. That ends up being a ground ball over to third base, and Tannehill kicks it. Jones makes first base on the error. That is the 3rd error of the game on the White Sox, and that is in a crucial situation, and Jim Stevens will come up, and we'll have him bunt. He rolls a 36, and it's a passed ball, and that puts Jones on at second base. And that very well could be a important play in this game. We'll see what winds up happening as we move forward. But it's very likely, I would say, that winds up being a crucial part of this game, because what we're going to do next, of course, is we're going to keep bunting with Stevens, because there's not too much else we're going to be able to do with him at a card like that. We'll roll a 42 now, and he strikes out, or gets a foul strike, that is. Stevens still up there now, and the count is 1 ball, 1 strike. We will bunt with him once again. We get a 16 for a 26, and that's a bunt that goes back to the pitcher, and Ed Walsh with nowhere to go with it other than first base. He throws it over to Jones, who covers at first, and over to Jones, over to Donahue, who covers at first. Jones is now at third base, and that brings up the pitcher, Bill Dineen, and this game is getting tighter and tighter as we go along. So that was Stevens with the good bunt, moving the runner over to third base, albeit with 2 outs. And we'll see what Bill Dineen can do and if he can help his own cause. Roll is a 61 for 13, and that is a strikeout. That is strikeout number 8 for Ed Walsh today. And we go to the bottom of the 8th inning. Boy, that was tight, and then maybe the Browns end up ruining that missed opportunity. Ed Walsh comes up now to lead it off for the Hitless Wonders, and this really was the Hitless Wonders team. The White Sox in 1905, 1906, 1907, 1908 all had a team like this that didn't hit the ball much, but they had great defense, great pitching. Walsh rolls a 43 for a 29. That's a little ground ball to Dineen. The pitcher, he throws over to first base for the first out, and up comes fielder Jones. Jones rolls a 36 for a 33, and that's a pop fly. That is a pop up over to second base. Williams has it for the second out. Up comes Ed Hahn now. He rolls a 51 for a 9. That's a single over short. Only the 4th hit of the ball game for the White Sox. I know I've been stressing this over and over again, but that's only hit number 4. Patsy Doherty now comes up, and we're going to play hit and run. Roll is a 55, which is a 9. And that, unfortunately for the White Sox, because we were hitting and running, that ends up turning into a ground ball to a ground ball to Wallace, who throws to first base for the out, and that does it. Up comes George Stone now, top of the 9th inning, and this is becoming more and more tense. Stone rolls a 52 for a 27. That's a ground ball over to third base. Tannehill makes the play, 1 out. Up comes Bobby Wallace. He rolls a 25 for an 8, and that's a ground ball over to Parent, and there's 2 outs. And you can sort of see, if you're watching how this system works, those hit numbers are taken away by good pitching. Hope Ferris now rolls a 23 for a 32. That's a fly ball over to Hahn in right field, and just like that, we're in the bottom of the 9th inning now. And first man up is George Davis. The rolls a 25 for a 9. Davis gets the single and then is caught stealing second on the as Freddie Parent is up there, and there's one away. Hit number 5 for the White Sox. We don't have much to show for it. Remember, it's not the hits that count, it's the runs. Next man up, Parent, rolls 14 for a 43. But here comes that little E. Let's see if the little E comes into play in this clutch situation. It doesn't. We roll a 41. And so the result is a fly out to left field to Stone, and that is the second out. Here comes Jiggs Donahue. Rolls a 32 for a 26. Little ground ball over to Williams, and we have extra innings. Jimmy Williams, after making that play, leads off the top of the 10th inning for the Browns. Roll is a 62 for a 12, and that's a little ground ball over to Donahue at first. He does it himself this time, one away. Danny Hoffman now rolls a 14 for a 43. That's a little fly ball to Doherty in left field, 2 away. Here comes Roy Hartzell. And that roll is a 16 for a 26, little ground ball to Davis. He throws over to Donahue at first. The Browns go down quietly in the top of the 10th. Here come the White Sox in the bottom of the 10th with Lee Tannehill starting it. He gets an 11 for a 0. Baby, let's see where this one goes. The next roll is a 54 for an 11. Tannehill with a single and then the stolen base right afterwards. And that brings up Billy Sullivan, now nobody out. And trying to think about strategy here. I mean, we know that we want to bunt with Sullivan. There's no question about it. I'm thinking one step ahead. What do I do with Ed Walsh when he comes up? Sullivan is bunting. The roll is a 31. The result is a 36. That's a passed ball again. I think that's 2 passed balls now. I have to go back and look and remember which team committed the last one. But that is the second pass ball of the game. We'll have all of the highlights and all of the results on our little post-game show on the blog. That is a huge play, though. That pass ball is bigger than you think because there's nobody out. And so the White Sox have 3 chances to get this run in from third base. Now, there's no way you're going to walk Sullivan because he's not much of a hitter. The question here, as it's been really the whole game, is so what do we do? Do we bunt? Do we bunt with Sullivan? Do we hit away with him? Right? I mean, are there a lot of things that could go wrong if I swing away with him here, or should I bunt and tell myself, well, that's what would happen in real life? My inclination in this particular setting, especially since Tannehill is not fast, is to swing away. I'm looking here. I don't see any like 11s. I don't see any signs that Tannehill is a particularly fast runner and that we should, like try some sort of like squeeze play with him or something like that. We're going to swing away with Sullivan. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Tell me what you would do in this situation. Result is a 51 for a 14. That's a walk. And Deneen now is a D pitcher just like that. And that brings up Ed Walsh. And Walsh now has a chance to help his own cause. And once again, we have this question as to, well, what do we do? Do we bunt? Because now if you think about this from the White Sox perspective, any sort of result... I'm sorry, let me do this again. While I'm talking and thinking, I'm trying to name files. There we go. Any sort of result that the White Sox have that is not a put out at the plate is a positive result. So you got to bring the infield in if you're St. Louis. I should have done that on the play before. Wouldn't have made a difference with that 14 result anyway. We're not going to run a hit and run. We technically could with Sullivan. I mean, I can take a quick look here. This is what I want to look at. He does have the 11, but I mean, there's no real need to. There's no real reason to because he doesn't matter in this situation. The only person that matters here is Lee Tannehill at third base. And so, there's no real need to hit and run. The question really is, do we bunt with Walsh or do we swing away? So, I mean, if you don't look at the on-base percentage or slugging percentage, just looking at his card in general, I would say in this situation, I mean, I think that he's good enough that we could just swing away and not have to worry too much about the bunt. The reason why I worry about the bunt are all these 13s. Now, again, I don't have these boards memorized. I know that those of you who play NP3 more than I do, or those of you who actually have the boards, I haven't had the boards for a couple of years now, sold them years ago. If you have the boards, you might be able to look at it and determine whether a bunt in this situation, or like a 13 on a bunt, would actually hurt you or not. I look at the card and I think, look, if Walsh strikes out, fine, then there's one out, and then you have Jones come up. So I'm going to swing away with Walsh. That's sort of my reasoning behind it. It may or may not be realistic. We've already bunted quite a few times in this game. We've had a number of sacrifices. I'm not worried about the stats being wrong. What I worry about here more is what do we do if we're actually managing the White Sox and we want to win this game? I think that the obvious thing to do in this case would be to actually swing away with Ed Walsh. What if we were playing a different game? If we were playing Diamond Mine, would I bunt? Would I not bunt in this situation? I don't know. I mean, I would take a look at Walsh's stats. I might swing away and decide to, try to pull one over on the stupid computer manager. Who knows? I mean, there's nobody out. What will go wrong? The rule is a 15. 15 is a 10. There's your ball game. And Ed Walsh gets the walk-off hit. He gets a single over second base, scores 1 run, and the game is the final score is 3-2 after 10 innings. And as always, I come out looking like a genius. How about that? I hope that you enjoyed that. This was a great game. All of the NP3 games are great. I really hope that you enjoy it. Hope that more people will learn more about this game and want to play it in the future. It's a wonderful game, and more people should enjoy it. It's quite realistic. It's a lot of fun. White Sox win this one, go to 3-1. One of the teams that will probably be there at the end of the season, competing for a American League pennant, but we'll see what happens. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.